Isn't it much better going into a bye week when we get to talk about a win and talk about 3-2? And believe it or not, Chris, the Pittsburgh Steelers are
first
in
place.
first place in the AFC North going into week 6. A good Victory Monday to you all. This is the Southside Beat, of course, streaming every Monday through Friday, 3 to 3:30-ish Eastern on DK Pittsburgh Sports and later where podcasts are found. He is Chris Halicke. I am Corey Crisan. If I look down here, it's because I have my notes, I have the final game book, I have all kinds of literature that helps describe what we saw on that football field at Acrisure Stadium.
And we still have the Fire Canada emojis.
The most unconventional 17-10 finish.
Oh my gosh!
At least in recent memory, you can thank Chris Boswell, you can thank Miles Killebrew, you can thank Hot Rod Rodney Williams if you want, but at the end of the day, you got to thank Kenny Pickett and George Pickens. The Pickett to Pickens magic worked towards the end of the game, Chris, and as a result, this is a much better feel going into a bye week in week 6 than maybe what we anticipated going into this weekend.
Yep. Listen, this is a Steelers team that is 3-2. They're not going to complain about that. They are 2-0 in the division. They are definitely not going to complain about that. If you're going to do anything in the division, you have got to at least win at home. And so far they've done that. They've only got the Bengals left for their home division games. So they have taken care. It's funny. Your favorite barber says, I said 11-10 Steelers and was almost right. You know, like I knew somebody, I think I couldn't put it together. So I need to give you credit, Barbara. I knew somebody had guessed 11-10 Steelers and good on you. Cause it really was, and really we do need to kind of, we do need to talk about it, Corey. I know you don't want to, but we do need to talk about it.
We can,
because this has really caused a lot of controversy among fans. It really has. And so we need to clear the air here. Listen, anybody who's watched this show for any kind of length of time knows that we are not afraid to be critical of Matt Canada, to be critical of the coaching. We're just not. I mean, we are very, very open and transparent about that. Listen, that play was not an audible. They did not audible to another play. They just didn't. Kenny called to check the protection to move it to the right, hence why he called Randy. Randy is or any other name that begins with R is to slide protection right. Louis, Larry, whatever else, slides protection to the left. It calls for max protection. Ravens were in cover 0. One-on-one with Pickens and no safety over the top. That's easy. That's easy Pickens. Pun. So yes. So Hodge brings it up here. Kenny audibles for max protect only. Yes, he did not change the play, and I can't explain Matt Canada's stoic reaction. That's probably the best way that I can put it. The only thing that I could think and is just he's a coach that's really, really laser focused on what's supposed to be coming next. Or he already had Mike Tomlin in his ear because he's wearing his headset saying we're going for 2. And so he's trying to look for Ravens personnel, what they're possibly sending out, what they're doing, blah, whatever. Other than that, I would like to see a little bit more emotion. Your offense has played like crap for the entire game.
Right.
But yeah, you would like to see something because there have been times where the broadcast has shown Matt Canada in the booth where he has celebrated. I think specifically I remember the really awesome play call that he had at the goal line in the loss to the Eagles last year, where Claypool threw the touchdown. I want to say that Canada that they showed him after that, and he was like celebrating after that. So I don't know.
All right. Randy asked who called the touchdown play. Then I'm going to give credit where it's due, and you have to, Chris. And this is going to probably piss off 99.9% repeating percent of Steelers fans. Matt Canada called that route. Matt Canada called that play. Yeah. Kenny adjusted the protection accordingly. He got the good block from Jaylen Warren on the backside. On the left side. And Broderick Jones, by the way, held his own again. That was a Pickett to Pickens special. Yep. George Pickens and Kenny Pickett connected on that play because, number one, Kenny Pickett recognized the blitz, recognized cover 0, knew he had George Pickens one-on-one on Marlon Humphrey.
With no safety over the top, yeah.
George Pickens knew he had one-on-one on Marlon Humphrey with no safety help. So that's what happened. George Pickens did his job in getting separation. Kenny Pickett did his job in putting a beautiful ball into the basket for George Pickens to catch. Matt Canada called that play. Give credit where it's due. That being said, Chris, period. Yeah. Next sentence. He still needs to go yesterday, today, tomorrow, the day after, etc.
It's still because overall the offensive performance yesterday was just not good enough. They couldn't run the ball. They couldn't get any rhythm. Every now and then when it looked like they might be beginning to establish some sort of rhythm on a series, something would put them behind the chains, or something would just, just completely derail what they were trying to do. Whether it was a bad play call, whether it was poor execution. I remember one specifically where they ran motion of Calvin Austin over and faked the jet sweep and handed it off to Najee up the middle. It didn't do anything. It wasn't a well-executed play. But that's like one where I actually like that play call, because you're trying to manipulate the defense to do something else other than we're getting ready for a run up the middle, and especially with the Steelers' affinity for running jet sweeps, it's something to try to throw the defense off. It just didn't work. You're not going to bat 1,000 even whenever you call a really good game.
Right. So, and you're not going to bat 1,000 on checking plays at the line of scrimmage either. Rick says, they guessed they got cover 0. If that didn't happen, what would that play have been? This is why tape study, this is why preparation, this is why game plan is so imperative in any sport, but obviously imperative in the NFL. This is baseball scouting reports. This is studying a starting pitcher. This is studying a reliever. Yep. This is basketball, knowing a player's tendencies. Is he going left? Is he going right? Is he going to drive? Is he going to shoot? This is game planning, and this is preparation coming to the field right here. Yes, yep. Kenny and George could have gotten it wrong, and maybe there was going to be safety help, but I think Kenny Pickett put a ball to where even if there was a safety, George Pickens would have had a shot to catch it. Yeah. Maybe it wouldn't have been a touchdown exactly, but George Pickens still had a chance to catch that ball. There's obviously many pieces to this game in the outcome of it. The Joey Porter interception is obviously huge. The Gunnar Olszewski fumble on the punt was obviously huge. That later eventually set up what would have been Joey Jr.'s first career interception. Yeah. Gunner's on the field because Calvin Austin's in concussion protocol, because he's being evaluated for a head injury. That's why Gunner's on the field. Guillermo asked the question, why was Gunner returning kicks? Because Calvin was being evaluated for a head injury. But also, Chris, we can't ignore, and the title of the show says it, stealing, Steeling, an AFC North win. This was probably more about Baltimore giving this game to Pittsburgh. And in the NFL, you take them. And in pro sports, you take them. In any sport, you take them. A win is a win is a win. Yeah. But Baltimore dropping 7 passes that Lamar Jackson put right on the button. 2, maybe 3 of those that could have been touchdowns, would have been touchdowns.
The one to Bateman for sure. The one to Andrews for sure.
The one to Aguilar for sure.
Aguilar for sure.
The Aguilar touchdown puts them up 17-3. This game's over.
Yeah.
So this was as much about Baltimore giving this to Pittsburgh as it was Pittsburgh winning it.
Yeah, it was a real, a lot of people aren't going to agree with it because, he did end up having the interception and he, had a fumble and everything. Lamar Jackson got a really, really high grade from Pro Football Focus for this game. And honestly, just from watching the tape, Lamar Jackson played a really, really good football game. I don't know if 94.6 or whatever that grade was is quite accurate enough, but still low 90s or upper 80s. Absolutely. He played a really good football game. Just as a whole, he didn't make a lot of dumb throws. He was very accurate. There was a few different throws where you really saw really great anticipation when the Steelers were in pretty tight zone coverage. They weren't leaving large windows, and he was still throwing before the receiver even broke out of routes, putting it right in the window where it was supposed to go, only where his guy could catch it, where a Steeler defender couldn't get it. He was making really good throws. He wasn't just, okay, if nothing's there, I'm going to take off. He used the time that his offensive line gave him to try to find guys. They converted long third downs because of it. If his receivers have even an average day, this isn't a Steelers win. We're talking about a loss. That's just that. Those are just the facts. If they can catch the football at all, like I said, we talked about 3 potential plays for sure. Rashad Bateman has an easy 6, drops it. Mark Andrews, okay, maybe not the easiest catch, but we've seen him make much, much more difficult catches. He needs to haul in that football. Nelson Aguilar, it's right on your freaking, it's right in the breadbasket.
That's
for
Nelson
you.
Aguilar's whole career. That's Nelson Aguilar's whole career. Zay Flowers falling on his own behind and dropping that one that could have went for huge yards. The Ravens shot themselves in the foot as much as they could have in this game.
Yeah,
and that is meanwhile Lamar Jackson playing arguably his best game of the season.
Arguably, definitely his. I mean, from what I can remember, I mean, I have to go back and look at like numbers and tape and everything like that, and I'm just not going to. But at least in my mind, and this might be immediate reaction, the best he's looked ever against the Steelers. He didn't look rattled, even though the Steelers were back there quite a bit. Alex Highsmith had a lot of pressures and everything like that. He never looked rattled. He never looked like completely like lost or anything. He looked like a quarterback who was in control, who knew what he was doing. His guys just weren't catching footballs. I mean, 7 drops. That's at Rico Costa coming in with the $10 donation. Thank you so much. Mm-hmm. But yeah, Lamar Jackson was actually really, really good for the Ravens. And the Steelers dodged a major bullet because his receivers couldn't catch the ball. Rico asked, or says, serious question. What exactly does Glenn Thomas do in this offense? I've not heard his name or heard him speak. What's going on? Good. I know this is like a joke on the Ramon show. Pretty sure. Corey,
go ahead.
I mean, you're there. You're there every day, man. What's Glenn Thomas doing every day?
There's really no speak of Glenn Thomas on the South Side. There's not much of it. The official title is offensive assistant. Now, that could mean one of a million things. That could mean he gives input to Matt Canada. That could mean he's there to help out Kenny Pickett in a hands-on, hands-off, in the film room, on the field situation. There's really no specific guideline to what Glenn Thomas does.
Yeah.
And there are not a lot of people that talk about Glenn Thomas on the South Side. Of course, the negative talk always goes to Matt Canada. The positive talk rarely goes to anybody.
Yeah.
And this is from the outside, of course. And, you know, when things go right, it's hard to credit who should it go to. And I feel like Glenn Thomas's name only comes up when we talk about something positive within the Steelers offense. Like it's almost as if he's like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a ghostwriter, you know, like a ghostwriting offensive coordinator. And he's the one really pulling the strings and Matt Canada's just the puppet. I don't think that's the case.
No,
but there's not a lot of, you can make up your own title. I see like as Matthew here saying assistant to the regional manager.
Yeah.
Like there's really no clear definition to what Glenn Thomas does. And there's offensive and defensive assistants everywhere.
Yeah.
So, you know,
and obviously I'm seeing a lot of people, you know, talking about Gunner and how that needs to go, or talking about how, I think I even saw somebody say, did this, he's the assistant to the assistant manager.
I saw somebody theorize that Gunner is a mole within the Steelers organization, and he's there to just consistently.
It really is. But it really is just absolutely mind-boggling that this guy has earned an All-Pro designation for being a returner.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever he has fumbled a game away, he has toe tapped a kickoff return on the sideline instead of letting it go so that the ball could be at the 40-yard line, and now ran into his own teammate and fumbled the ball, and without a Joey Porter Jr. Thank you, Mike Rosenthal, for being a new member. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, welcome aboard. We appreciate it. Enjoy your emojis, the Moan emojis, the DK emojis. Enjoy all of them.
But I mean, to with everything that he's done, I don't understand. If he earns another helmet this year, it only has to be because of injuries. Like I just don't understand. This is even worse than it was last year. Like to be completely honest, it really is. But I saw somebody else mention, like, did the team save Matt Canada's job? And I'm going to confirm stay in this stance of being like, just Matt Canada's not being fired mid-season. Again, if it's done, it breaks every precedent set before him. Like every single precedent, the Steelers just don't fire coaches in the middle of a season. I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm just saying that, like, until it's actually done, I won't believe it's happening. Like, period. I don't need to be speaking with inside sources to be trying to figure that out. Like, that's just not anything. The Steelers could have lost that game yesterday, played a terrible offensive game, and I still believe that Matt Canada would be the offensive coordinator whenever they take the field again.
I agree.
Now, that doesn't mean that certain, like, responsibilities and everything don't get shifted possibly, but in terms of actually being fired, like, you're no longer welcome on the South Side, turn in your badge, or you're no longer employed here. I don't think so.
Mini Hulk, I brought this was brought up at the beginning of the show, and I started to the side. Mini Hulk says Joey Porter Jr. needs to start over Levi Wallace. It's very clear now that he does.
Yeah.
And this goes back to what you talked about, Chris, with organizational philosophy as far as firing coaches. There's a similar organization philosophy that goes along with developing their rookies. It's specifically this rookie class, which if you read my post-game story on DKPittsburghSports.com, it didn't just focus on Joey Jr. It focused on Broderick Jones. It focused on Keanu Benton. It focused on Darnell Washington. And even the second-year guys, now Kenny Pickett, now George Pickens, Calvin Austin, etc. It is so blatantly, obviously clear now. Terrell Austin has no reason, no excuse, no explanation. It's over. There's no reason to keep Joey Porter Jr. off the field. Now, who do you do it for? You put him in the cornerback outside for Levi Wallace. Do you put him outside for Pat Peterson? You probably do that with Pat P. Move Pat P inside, and essentially that's your upgrade in the slot and in the nickel situations over a Chandon Sullivan.
So it's really interesting. I sent you the stats earlier today on Joey Porter Jr. from Pro Football Focus. 86 total snaps. Now, not all of those are coverage sacks, but the vast majority of them are. I want to say it's like 70 something are coverage snaps. 7 targets. That alone right there, like, you would think rookie cornerback teams are going to be attacking him. They're not. It's the same thing that happened at Penn State. The teams aren't throwing in his direction. So what does that tell you? He might have his guy covered. On those 7 targets, he's allowed 1 catch for 12 yards. He's had 1 pass breakup, and he now has a pick. That is a passer rating of 0.0. I mean, I'm very, very vocal here that Joey Porter Jr. needs to learn how to tackle. No question about that.
That's still true. It's still true.
However, you have a guy who is absolutely, like, who so far has been, granted small sample size, but so far, okay, listen, okay, I just want to clear the air here. Mr. CJ Jr., I think I'm saying that right, I hope, says PFF is garbage. Listen, PFF's grading system, I don't agree with. Their grading system is subjective. I don't agree with it. Their stats are on the money. The actual stats, when you say that somebody has played 86 snaps, 84 in the corner, 1 in the slot, 1 in the box, like, those are trackable stats that you can go back, watch the film. If you want to, I mean, take the time to do it, but you would be able to find that Joey Porter Jr. has played 86 snaps, 84 at cornerback, 1 in the slot, 1 in the box. Like, those type of stats, those and everything else that goes along with it are easily trackable and are, for the most part, right on the money. So PFF is a good tool for things like that, not for, Lamar Jackson was the highest graded player in yesterday's game.
Myles Garrett was the highest graded player in yesterday's game.
They're all because they're all focused on winning their pass rush or whatever it is, their win rate on pass rush and everything. It's like, did he get to the quarterback? We can go down that road. I mean, like, the grading system is subjective to what they favor as what makes a good edge rusher or what makes a good, pass blocker, whatever it is. But in terms of the actual trackable stats, PFF is a really good tool for stuff like that.
I have 3 quick ones I want to hit that I've starred from the YouTube comments section. Robert asks, any update on Dan Moore, James Daniels, and Pat Freiermuth? We won't get that until the next time Mike Tomlin speaks, at minimum. Yeah. I will say I saw all 3 of them in the locker room today on the south side. The locker room was open for about 45 minutes. Saw all of them walking around, just kind of chilling on the south side. So they are around. There's no indication that either of them are going to be out, for a crazy amount of time. Maybe a couple more weeks for Pat Freiermuth. James Daniels seems like a week-to-week thing right now. And Dan Moore, a sprained knee, that could take you down, for an undisclosed amount of time. It just kind of depends on the severity of it. Guillermo says, just imagine we had Corey Trice. I don't know if Corey Trice as a 7th rounder would be getting the same kind of, the same kind of Ferrari treatment that Joey Porter Jr. is getting. It seems like Joey Porter Jr., he's drafted as the third cornerback in that class. He's highly coveted. He's already polished. I think Corey Trice would have been more of a project for Terrell Austin, for Grady Brown, and those coaches on the Steelers defense to more or less have him ready for next year instead of this year. Again, being a 7th round pick, like he's had injury issues his whole college career as well. So yes, he's a good player. He was a good player at Purdue, but that doesn't mean it was going to translate right away to the NFL. Matthew asks, why can Jaylen Warren just blow past people right now, but Najee can't run out of a paper bag? That's just the style of running back Najee Harris is. He's not going to break 40-yard runs. Jaylen Warren could be your explosive running back. Najee Harris is really good for 3 yards in a cloud of dust, for 8 yards in a cloud of dust, for those really tough, rough and tumble runs that the Steelers love to pride themselves on. Jaylen Warren is the more explosive running back, and I don't think there's a question of that right now, but that doesn't put Najee Harris down either, I think.
No, and listen, the most successful run that I saw with Najee yesterday was a really, really good outside zone run. Broderick Jones and Darnell Washington both just sealed off the edge perfectly. And, outside zone, your main attacking point is off tackle. So it would be in that gap between the tackle and the tight end. And they opened that up, and Najee was absolutely looking that, of course, being, a zone runner, you have to have your eyes on essentially 3 different lanes possibly. And he saw that hole open and he hit the hole. I think he gained like 7 or 8 yards, something like that. It was a good run. The problem is that the run blocking was still a bit inconsistent yesterday. It was better. The offensive line is getting better.
Mm-hmm.
It's still not where it needs to be.
It was secret Broderick Jones starting, by the way.
Yeah. Broderick Jones was really good. But Mason Cole told you this morning, saying that they're far from playing their best ball. The offensive line still has to get better. And honestly, I didn't see the same Najee yesterday that I'm not trying to, be this, Najee apologist or anything like that. I didn't see the same Najee that we saw in Houston. It just wasn't, quite attacking the hole as violently as he was in the second half against the Texans. But overall, it was one of those situations. I think this is why you want to have a really good 1-2 punch, is that last week in Houston, Najee was the guy. He was the hot hand. You were riding with him. You go with him. Jaylen at one point just showed everybody, like, listen, I'm going to be the guy right now. Give me the rock. I'm going to do something special with it. And they did that. Credit to Mike Tomlin, Matt Canada, whoever it is that's making sure, okay, Jalen's hot right now. Let's keep going to him. And they did. And Jaylen, kind of, I don't say carried the offense, but he absolutely was a spark that they needed. So that's the great thing about having, a duo at running back. You can have one of, either guy could step up at a moment's notice and become the guy, the go-to guy in a moment.
Robert asked, do you think Broderick Jones took over the job from Dan Moore? That's exactly what I think. I think you have to play Broderick too. These rookies, again, my whole basis of yesterday's column that I wrote after the game, which you can now read on DKPittsburghSports.com. Enough's enough with the kids. Enough of the growth, enough of the development, enough of the plan, enough of all that other jargon and nonsense. You have to play these kids now. You have to play Porter. You have to play Broderick. You have to play Darnell. Obviously, Darnell is a little bit different with his role. Pat Freiermuth more of the catching tight end, and Darnell is the blocker. You have to play Keanu Benton, even when Cam comes back. You have to play these rookies. Nick Herbig's a little bit different because of TJ and Alex being right there. But you have to play the rookies. We've seen it across the league. Zay Flowers was Baltimore's best receiver yesterday, even despite the drops. Tank Dell and CJ Stroud ate the Steelers alive. Devin Witherspoon and Christian Gonzalez up until he got hurt were lockdown corners for their respective teams. This rookie class, Will Anderson makes an impact for the Texans. This rookie class is really damn good. And the Steelers, I think, with those 5 picks in the first 4 rounds, made 5 amazing choices that are instant impact guys Now, it depends on the role. It depends on the depth in front of them. But there's no reason from this point forward after the bye why Broderick Jones, Joey Porter Jr., Keanu Benton should not be starting.
Yeah, well, I mean, Keanu Benton really, I mean, and to be fair, Keanu Benton has earned technically a starting role. He is an or starter on the depth chart. And so that means that pretty much whatever Mike Tomlin's fancy is that day, that's who's starting between either him or I don't even remember who the or starter is. I want to say
it would be Leal when he's
DeMarvin
healthy.
Leal.
It would be Leal when he's healthy.
So Leal would be there possibly, but Leal was obviously out with a concussion. So Keanu Benton got the start. And he played well again. I mean, nothing that was like nothing like we saw in the Vegas game, but I mean, first series he had a quarterback hit on Lamar Jackson. I mean, that's a good way to to at least get your feet wet in terms of an introduction to the Steelers-Ravens rivalry. But yeah, and honestly, Mr. CJ Jr. brings up fifth-year option for Najee. I mean, it's third year right now, so I do kind of want to see how the rest of this year goes because you'd have to exercise it before his fourth year. So yeah, because so I don't know, they're gonna have to make a decision this offseason for sure. But yeah, Dan Moore, when it comes to the whole left tackle job, man, like the way Broderick's playing, man, I'm in full agreement with you. I think these rookies should be playing.
Mm-hmm.
And now you have the bye week to really review some tape, to really review a lot of stuff. Joey Porter Jr. has absolutely earned a spot with how bad Levi Wallace and Patrick Peterson have looked. I'd still might say that probably if you're going to take one of the two guys out, you would probably take out Pat P because he can always move to the slot. I think Pat P would probably be better off in the slot anyway, and I think he'd be better than what Shannon Sullivan's doing because right now Shannon Sullivan really ain't doing much. He's getting beaten coverage, so I don't know. But Joey Porter Jr. has got to be out there. Broderick Jones, I have a hard time saying, listen, you're going to take a seat to Dan Moore again after that performance.
Chris, let's talk about Kenny Pickett. Okay.
Yep.
18-32, 224 yards. 1 touchdown, no interceptions. He was sacked 3 times. And, of course, he threw the 41-yard bomb to Pickens, 88.5 rating. Kenny Pickett now in his NFL career, this is essentially 1 year of him starting. Kenny Pickett in his NFL career is 10-7 and has guided 5 game-winning drives, 5 comebacks in the fourth quarter. Half of his wins have come via the comeback fashion. Yep. I don't think there's any doubt, and I don't think we had any doubt. We had the Mitch Trubisky, Kenny Pickett discourse of who right now in their current state gives the Steelers the best chance to win, meaning Kenny being hurt or a healthy Mitch Trubisky. And this is also factoring in how Kenny Pickett has looked over the last couple of games. With the Raiders and with the Texans game, Rico chimes in with a $5 contribution. What's up with Desmond King? We'll get to Desmond King in a moment. Kenny Pickett, to me, Chris, showed that not only that he is the long-term answer quarterback, but this is going to be a guy, and I think this is key, for as long as Matt Canada is this offensive coordinator, and even after, he is going to keep the Steelers into football games. He proved it on Sunday. He didn't throw anything away, meaning obviously no interceptions, but he didn't put any risks out there either. He took care of the football well. He seemed like, at least compared to the Texans game, his decision-making was better. His poise was better. His awareness and presence was better. And to your point earlier, he had a better offensive line to block for him. Broderick Jones was phenomenal. So I think Kenny Pickett showed us more in this game than we have seen from him in any other game this season.
No, he looked good for the most part. I still, there were still some throws he missed. Still some times where you see the happy feet coming, and that's not going to be completely, wiped away in one performance. He did have a bit more time. That always helps things for a quarterback. When the pass protection's better, he's gonna, Monongahela Mike's still leaving the pocket a little early. Yeah, he is.
And that's part of Kenny having to shake that. Kenny has to learn to sit in a little longer. He has to get a feel for it a little bit more.
Yeah, there was one play in particular that I remember where he ended up moving to his left, but he really made a commitment to staying in the pocket for a good 3 seconds, I want to say. And then anybody who's played football, that's an eternity for a quarterback back there. So I say for a good 3 seconds, he was back there. And even whenever he kind of moved to his left, he didn't just do that like spin thing where he just goes and takes off. He just kind of more drifted to his left, found a guy for a completion too. So no, I mean, he looked better. That's what you want to see. You want to see continuous improvement, especially coming off the injury he had in the game before. A good performance to go into the bye with, but there's still a lot more to be desired in terms of this is our next franchise quarterback. Like if when you talk about players going in, like this is our guy, like there's still more that needs to be desired. But we definitely need to go back to to Rico's donation saying, "What's up with King? He's going to play second year this year." Also, major kudos to Austin and staff for making adjustments in the second half. King, I mean, he wasn't mentioned in the injuries, so why wasn't he returning kicks? Even with Calvin Austin out, because even with Calvin Austin in there, Desmond King was usually the one returning kicks. So why Gunner became the guy for both, I don't know. I'm assuming that Desmond King, not getting put in there. It's just been because, and Damon Brown coming in, dude, $20, $19
contribution.
Awesome,
that's amazing. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. But I would assume that the whole Desmond King thing is just because they don't like bringing in cornerbacks and just throwing them in there without really studying and knowing the defensive scheme. And Mike Tomlin isn't necessarily the type of coach that flaps in the wind when it comes to changing personnel. I mean, look what he's doing with these rookies.
Yes. And I would expect that they would start sooner rather than later. Again, I think there's something to Porter, Broderick, and Benton, especially. Benton did this really in week 3. Yeah. And part of it was out of necessity because Cam Hayward got hurt. But also, Benton has just played well all season long.
Yeah.
I wrote about, if you want to rewind the tape, so to speak, entering the year, I wrote, and at the draft, I wrote Keanu Benton's my favorite draft pick. Breakout player potential. Could be the most impactful draft pick right now. And I really just like sometimes venting when I'm right. And I think I was right about Keanu Benton. I had a good feeling about it when they picked him. I like the overall fit for the defense. He's a good kid. So Keanu Benton to me is right now the Steelers' most impactful rookie. But Joey Porter Jr. is like inching right there. He's right there alongside him. A ton of good stuff coming in the chat today, and we would love to stay on longer, but duty calls. Damon
gave us $19.99. We gotta address this. Jalen Warren makes Kenny look better. Look at the tape of all the big plays, game-winning drive. Najee didn't see the field, which tells me the Steelers trust Jalen more. They're just not going to admit that to us. I think that's probably a little bit more of the fact that it's first off, it's the situation they're in. They're going to be operating out of the shotgun a little bit more often, more tempo. Jalen fits that better than Najee does. And then also, again, Jalen was the hot hand. And again, good on the coaching staff for realizing that Jalen was the hot hand at the time and sticking with it. It doesn't mean that Najee needs to be the RB2 or Jalen needs to be the RB1. It just means if the situation were reversed and this were Houston, when Najee was the guy, Najee needs to be on the field, regardless of the situation that they're in, because Najee was running through walls for that team last week. This week, Jalen was the guy hurdling over guys, staying on his feet, using his hands and everything to keep from elbows and knees hitting the ground. I mean, dude was just he was phenomenal yesterday. Jalen Warren was great yesterday, and good on the coaching staff for keeping him in there when he was like the guy. I mean, that's what they need to be doing. Read the room. He's the guy. Go to him more often.
Got a final thought before we get out of here, Chris?
No, I pretty much said my piece on the whole, on the final play when it came to audible thing. It's just because there are just, I understand that there are people that don't want to give credit to Matt Canada possibly. And that's fine, because I went into, if you haven't read it, I did a deep dive on it. On the new series now we're calling Chalk Talk instead of Breakdown, which I think is a much better name. So But I did a deep dive on that play yesterday and some added context onto it, like what defenses have been doing against George Pickens and why the Steelers took advantage of that cover zero situation. But, listen, you got to call it like you see it. When George Pickens says that's the play we came out of, and out of the huddle with, when Kenny Pickett says we got the protection right, and Jalen Warren says yes, that wasn't the original play, but then he goes on to talk about how we had how they changed things up front and that they needed to execute up front. He's obviously talking about the protection that was needed up front because it was switched to max protection. So there are people in the comments that still don't believe me, and that's fine. I'm talking about the comments on the site, not on here. Mm-hmm. But it's just give credit where credit's due, man. When it came down to it, Mike Tomlin, Matt Canada, Kenny Pickett, George Pickens, all those guys across the board executed perfectly.
Beautiful comment from Jason to end the show on Harbaugh for Steelers Hall of Honor. That was
a really, really bad game for him yesterday, too. It really was
not the one that he's going to want to put on his Hall of Fame resume.
No.
I know that.
No.
Thanks to all who listened in live, of course.
Yes,
and
thank you so much
for chiming in.
This might be our longest show ever.
It could be, but I think for good reason. Thanks to those who chimed in with the super chat. That goes a long way. Leaving a like, sharing this episode, sharing previous episodes, obviously go a long way as well. And please remember, if you can't catch us live, 3 to 3:30 Eastern, we are available in podcast form. Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, all that fun stuff. So remember, we can find us on there if you missed the show live, on demand, on instant, every day.
It's a pretty low bar. That's bad. Believe me, it's a low bar. Give credit for the one really good play, and it was a great time to dial up an aggressive play. They still need to be a lot better.
We're on to Tuesday. We're on to Tuesday. We're on to the bye week. Plenty more to come this week. I still don't have a schedule for what's going on the South Side yet. So they will be practicing. It's just a matter of when. We'll find that news out. And, of course, we'll talk to you this week. But for now, DK and Ramon coming up in about 24 minutes or so, based on math. He's Chris. I'm Corey. This has been the South Side Beat on a Victory Monday, an overreaction Victory Monday. And we'll talk to you Tuesday. Cheers, everybody.